So it's been quite a while since my last video, and that's partly because I just haven't been racing that much. I think in the past 10 months I've raced twice, once in November and once in January. And in both of those races, which were also at the Armory, I got dropped. So yeah, they didn't go too well. And in this race, I really just wanted to be able to stay with the pack and yeah, finish with the bunch. The other thing I really wanted to improve on in this race was my cornering. So this course only has one corner and it is really tight. I'm usually fine going through by myself where I can pick my own line, but I really struggle going through it in the bunch, and often I brake too much because I'm worried I'm going to go into the back of the person in front of me, and then that means I have to chase way too hard up the hill. In fact, the last time I raced here, on one of the laps, I completely stuffed up the corner and had to go onto the grass, which was quite embarrassing. So if I could stay on the road and do a lot better in the corner in this race, I would be happy. Right, so back onto this race. We had 10 riders in total, which is a pretty good sized bunch for D grade. And it was a little bit windy. There was a headwind on the finishing straight. And this is still actually the first lap. The lap counter's a bit off because I did a couple of warm-up laps before the race. So this is the first time going through the corner, and as you can see, I brake too much, and then a gap forms and I have to push really hard going up the hill. And you can see the LACC rider behind me overtakes me. He probably thinks he doesn't want to be stuck behind me every corner. But yeah, as you can see, I'm carrying a bit more speed than the bunch, which slows up. So I keep a bit of pressure on the pedals just to move up a bit and just slot in around here. As the race went on, I would say my cornering improved a bit. I didn't nail every corner, but I was doing a lot better than that first go around. So this is a couple of laps later, and this is what it must be like for other people when they corner behind me and I stuff up the corner. You can see the rider in front of me in black is taking off a lot of speed, and I almost go into the back of him. I have to touch the brakes mid-corner as well. Anyway, you can see how much easier it is going up this hill when you take the corner near the front. I don't have to push as hard or as long just to stay in contact with the bunch. And at this point, I didn't really want to hit the front, but the guy next to me is sort of soft pedaling, and I soft pedal for a little bit, but I think he really wants someone to go through, so in the end I just pedal through. And this is probably the first time I've ever ridden on the front of the bunch in like the last 2 races, and the last 2 I got dropped and I was just hanging on, so I didn't really want to be at the front for this race. And look, I weigh like 53, 54 kilos, so I'm pretty light, and we're going on this downhill sort of flat smooth section, and my FTP is around 170, so I'm still putting out like reasonable effort going along here, but I think everyone behind me must just be like freewheeling in the draft. Anyway, because I'm going so slow, someone else decides to go to the front, and that probably suits me because I don't want to spend any more time on the front. So yeah, the first couple of laps, nothing much happened, and here there's an attack, I think. I'm a bit too far back to see, and actually in this moment I didn't actually notice that there were people off the front, but I saw Steve here try bridge across, and then I realised, well, there's actually quite a big gap. But then I just sit on his wheel and he sort of drags me across, and I think the bunch just stays together anyway, so it wasn't that much of a move. Skipping forward a couple of laps, we're going up the hill again, and I can see the rider in front of me is sort of left a gap open, but I'm watching the riders in front and is slowly closing it down, so I just sit in his wheel, and I think we're getting really close. Like here, it's pretty much on the wheel, so I'm thinking, okay, that's good. And then suddenly the gap opens up again, and I'm watching it, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And then at this moment I'm thinking that I really have to jump across. So this is the first sort of big effort that I do in the race to close the gap and get across. And you can see I'm going putting out a reasonable amount of effort, and I'm going much faster than the bunch in front, which actually sort of slows down a bit, and then I'm back on, and then in the end that was actually like an unnecessary effort, because they don't really keep the pace up, and then you'll notice later on that the rider in front of me before, who dropped the wheel, he gets back on the bunch anyway. One lap later, going into the corner again, I'm not really sure what happens, but the pace slows really suddenly, so you can see that there, and I brake a bit too much, so I go through the corner a bit slow, and then there's a massive gap that opens up, and this is the second big effort that I had to make in the race, and it's not really something that I wanted to do, because this was, I think, 2 laps to go until the finish, and you can see I still haven't closed the gap down. I managed to get back onto these 2 riders, but if you notice, there's actually another big gap between these 2 riders and the bunch, so I was hoping they would chase it down, and you can see in the end we do get back together, which is good for me. Right, so fast forwarding a little bit, I'm sitting on last wheel at the moment, and we're going into the bell lap. So you can see we get the bell, and I try to make up a couple of places here, because I think I'm just way too far back if I want to compete in the sprint. And you can see this LACC rider has the same idea. So we go into the corner too wide, and we go quite hard going up this hill for the last time. And I was worried, a little bit worried here, that the wheel I was on for this LACC rider, he just wasn't going to close the gap, because you can see there's a bit of a gap forming, and in the end he does get back on, which is good. But then this LACC rider on the right, he goes in, and in hindsight I probably should have gone up, because I was a bit far back here, and then you can see he pulls off after that effort. So I have to close this little gap, and this is the final, going into the final sprint. So in my mind here I kept thinking like I'm way too far back. Looking back at this footage, I'm not in that bad of a position, but I kept thinking that I was, so I tried to move up a little bit, and I couldn't really get that far up, and right now I'm sort of riding in the wind, not in the draft, and I didn't want to push the other LACC rider off this guy's wheel, so I'm sort of riding in the wind, and we are approaching the finish line here, and the sprint starts, and then I've got nothing left in the legs, so I try to sprint for a little bit, and then once the gap sort of opens up I just stop sprinting. I think I came 5th across the line, depending on whether that rider on the right beat me. I think it was really close between us. But yeah, I'm really happy to have finished with the bunch. And Caroline, the other Park Life rider, came 2nd. So congrats to her. I think she came 2nd last time as well. And yeah, here's some final stats for the race. Average speed was 34.2 kilometers an hour, which seems about right for a D grade race. And yeah, my max power was 793 watts. That was going up the hill for one of the laps. It's a little bit disheartening to not be able to get even close to that for the final sprint. And when I sprint, when I'm fresh, I can hit much higher numbers. So I guess that's sort of a fitness thing. I've got to get a bit fitter so that I can have enough in the tank to actually sprint at the end. Anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I'm going to make an effort to try and make a video for every race that I do from now on. So check back soon, and hopefully I'll be making more videos. Alright, see ya.